Definitely need to ask for more. Oh man. All right. Um, so this is kind of a unique one for me. I usually have to talk a lot during these videos. But today,
You mean you
um,
won't?
no, absolutely not. I'm gonna do a
Oh,
little intro and then I'm gonna hand it off to you. Today, I get to like just be a tech geek, right? If you watch me, if you follow me on LinkedIn, you know that I love technology. I love talking about AI and all the cool things that technology can do for us, and how it works with our career, how it works as with the procurement function. Um, and through the course of this series of videos, we've talked about how important uh, data visibility and spend visibility are to the things that we do in procurement and SRM. It helps us to understand our suppliers, our spending patterns, the performance of the suppliers, how we use that to make informed decisions going forward. Um, we talked about the difference between traditional SRM and data-driven SRM. How one focuses on cost reduction, kind of adversarial relationships, and just living up to the contract and making sure we're getting what the contract says we're supposed to get. And then finally, Sheldon got us talking about this relationship layer. Um, like it's more than just the contract, but building on the contracts to create data-driven collaborative relationships. So we've spent this time over the course of the last, I don't know, 6 months talking about how we can build these collaborative, innovative relationships that go above and beyond what we're supposed to get in a contract. And he talked about it in the framework of this pretty cool platform that allows you to take unstructured data and all this other stuff that we talk about that we could use as procurement folks, as SRM folks to validate our expectations on these relationships, but we haven't gotten to see it. So now we're gonna get to see it. And this is gonna be the last thing I say. I'm gonna tell you right now, I've got my Twizzlers. I don't know if you can see that. And I'm gonna sit back and I'm gonna let Sheldon show me and get to play with the toy, because it's a toy to me, that is the Suppeco platform. Um, Thank you everybody for joining, and I'm done. And if you see me eating Twizzlers, please don't be offended.
you
Sheldon,
eat
take it away.
away, my friend. Eat away. Um, Thanks for that. It has been a really good 6 months, actually. We've covered quite a lot of ground, as you say, including supplier management frameworks, traditional governance schedules, how kind of analog type approaches to supplier management work and how they're transitioning into a more kind of digital landscape, and how that unlocks all sorts of possibility and potential, not least of which how AI is helping to drive that journey as well, because it unlocks so much potential. So let me just try. What I'm going to do, I'm going to just rush through these slides really quickly because a lot of people on it may have seen these slides. Let me just enlarge that. So I'm going to run through them very quickly because they segue into the platform quite nicely rather than just going in cold. Okay, so so I'm trying not to lose my voice because I've been talking a lot recently. So Suppeco is obviously all about relationships. It's about exploring top line value rather than just being focused down on the numbers. We spend a long time being focused down on the numbers. A very, very important place, spend management, of course. But there is a lot more going on there besides what happens in the contract, to be honest with you. And what happens above that contract, typically 25% over term, as you've heard me say before, hemorrhages out of the door, that additional value creation potential around 25% over term hemorrhages out the door because of poor data retention. So statistics like this, you'll have seen loads of them with these different brands pushing out these kind of statements. So you'll be familiar with these. The things, they're all still current, and they all kind of focus on a different flavor of the message that is relationship driven value is hemorrhaging out the door because we're not doing enough to kind of manage it and to harness that value. And it was the head of procurement at BAE that said it, one of our customers that said it really well, coming off the back of the pandemic, that we're going to need to find better ways to meet the value targets, because a traditional category managed or spend managed approach isn't going to do the trick. Because if we hit recession, times get tougher. Those pre-negotiated, predefined contract margins that are locked inside those contracts shrink too. So it's simple math, right? Whereas the value targets, they are still sky high, and that typically is the stuff that comes out of the non-contracted area where the collaboration and the innovation lives. Two really important. Let me just pull this down here out of the way. Two important statistics here, and there's a big link in here to sustainable supply chain. 6% of companies have full visibility of their supply chain. That's a very low number. Can't see around bends. We very rarely see beyond tier ones. That much we know. And 95% plus of companies out there, they're SMEs. We also know that they are the engine behind all our economies are the SMEs. Let's face it, 95% of companies out there. And the thing is, the further you go upstream in the supply chain, the smaller those companies become. And 43% of those smaller companies have zero visibility of their produce once it leaves their premises. They're too busy trying to pay the bills. Remember those recession times that we've been talking about. The challenge there is that the exponential kind of waves of CSR and ESG legislation that's hitting us everywhere at the moment, around the world, for all good reason. It lands on the customer's desk, but with 80% of the company's revenue being created outside or generated outside its immediate borders by its supply chain, that legislation has only got one place to go, out into the supply chain. Now look at these two stats. They really come into focus, and they become very, very challenging. Okay, you cannot. The point being here, you cannot drive a sustainable supply chain by imposing it. You've got to do it. You're having a relationship. So an EcoVadis study, 100% of the suppliers that they surveyed said that the CSR clauses that were pushed out into contract weren't worth the paper they were written on, because they were just pushed out in a contract. They were imposed. Fact is, and I can attest to that, having worked in outsourcing for many years, where we'd be novating stacks of contracts, and CSR would be a checklist. Tick, 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 because we had so much work to do. So that's what it would be, and it had really no value whatsoever. Things have changed now. Legislation has teeth. Whistleblowing is on the rise. The companies don't want their logos found in landfill or other much more serious offences. It's just not a good place to be, right? So this is where Suppeco comes in. We're starting to kind of home in on the technology now. Suppeco delivers a more structured and scalable approach to doing everything that we've been talking about over the last 6 months. Think about today's supply chain, typical supply chain. You've got one country waking up, another country going to sleep, different product lines, service lines, languages, time zones, and that's just the customer. Now overlay against that all the supplier interactions, and you've got a very complex web of sophistication, non-stop around the clock. You can't do that with spreadsheets and PowerPoints, which is how I started in the industry, by working with organizations using PowerPoints and spreadsheets to kind of make these kind of funky formulas that could emulate subjective behavior, turning it into something objective that we could then measure. It worked then, it doesn't work now. So there are 5 key cornerstones in our technology. One is 4 pillars, the one on the left, which is a real differentiator. There have been SRM systems out there but according to the many CPOs that I speak to on a regular basis, none of them that they've seen do relationships. They are all KPI dashboards. And I get it, because supply chain was invariably an overhead. As is the case with any overhead, the case is that the emphasis is to drive costs down. And purist procurement would have let those contracts, and their mission in life also happened to be to drive costs down. A lot is changing out there, as we know. There are big discussions around both of those points that we could dig into, but we won't now. Suffice to say that is what drove product market fit. Those two things drive product market fit, which is why you see technology being KPI dashboards over the years rather than relationship-driven technology. things are changing. Pandemic happened. Every market analyst out there saying procurement supply chain, they need to focus heavily on relationship-driven resilience. And we've really started to see that change over the last 4 years. And we've created a digital relationship layer that you will see on the platform. Number two is actionables. It's the ability to see and the ability to do in real time. This is also a game changer and is a big part of digital transformation. If you think about it. So McKinsey did a study back before the pandemic, 2019. It was called Shifting the Dial in Procurement. In it, they said that digital platforms such as ours can afford an additional incremental 3 to 10% or 3 to 10% incrementally on an annual basis, because they are able to see and they are able to do in real time. So it's being able to see, mobilize, and fix. Or put it another way, vacating events-based governance, events-based activity, your functional governance schedules in favor of continuous improvement. So KPIs such as time to action, time on task, both radically reduced by the ability to do things in real time. That's actionables. Number three, insights. In order to make the first two work, you need only use live data, because data is a valuable commodity, right? But it ages fast. Let me just take a swig of my coffee. And to be honest with you, if you're using static data on a digital platform, you're missing a trick because it's a gift. Number four, omni. This is where we've created an omni-channel environment for an entire ecosystem to come together in a frictionless but controlled way. And two really important points here. If you think about the organizations that you work for and the suppliers that you have, all of those suppliers are likely to have a bilateral contract with you. The Holy Grail. It's going to contain any number of different sensitivities that you or your suppliers do not want to share with other players, other contributing parties. And that's the Holy Grail, okay? But the other thing to consider is that the services that those suppliers provide to you are probably provided anything but bilaterally. They do require collaborative activity at scale across geographies. So these two swim lanes are very, very, very important. They've got to work harmoniously, but they've got to work, they've got to be foolproof. So there's a lot of activity behind the scenes going on to make those channels work well for a scalable product that works in real time across multiple regions. And the fifth one is automate, which is another very, very important area, because as big as companies are, and they don't have to be big, by the way, but as big as companies do become, they still have the same resource challenges where they don't have enough people to do the work. And they don't want to have their time consumed over laborious tasks. They need to get onto where the value is, especially as there are fewer people doing the work. So the platform uses a set of algorithms to automate all of the data. Essentially, as you'll see on the platform, the data follows the users. The users don't have to log in looking for the data because they won't. They're busy. There's a lot going on. Sat on a call with BP and NTN in Saudi about 2-3 months back, and BP said, we've got too much data, we're swimming in it or drowning in it, they said. We want to be able to, and we've got multiple dashboards or multiple scorecards and screens, you name it, and we're just swimming in data. And really what we want is just data that we can swallow at a time. Too much to bite off and we're lost. It's exactly what we do. We use a set of algorithms to quality stamp and date stamp every single bit of identifiable, person identifiable data, as in the person that contributed the data onto the platform. And we push everything out to the users. Sneak preview of what we do on the platform, the aesthetics. Nobody wants to use spreadsheets, let's face it. So we build it not to be like spreadsheets. And I have, as a background, as a practitioner, I know that people don't want to just go online onto the next big thing and find it looking like spreadsheets. Also, it's highly responsive because we're not sitting at our desks in the same way anymore. We're distributed, we're remote, we're all over the place. That's thanks in no small measure to COVID, but obviously with services, the different services that are provided across different engagements, there's a lot of field work needed. So we provide a system that doesn't degrade data on responsive devices, such as mobiles and tablets. Again here, so it's built to be standalone, to be honest with you. It doesn't require heavy customization, intrusive implementation. It gets the work driving value pretty much same day. It's really easy to get to grips with. Having said all of that, it is an open API for API first architecture. It's an Azure native cloud platform. We've created a pretty cool orchestration layer, which is always advancing. Just as an example of some of the organizations that we speak to and some of whom that we are partnering with. And there are many on it that we're not, that we're partnering with that aren't on the list of them in this schematic. So it's a multi-tenanted platform. It's an ISO 27001 accredited platform. You can see some of the integrations and partnerships that we've got. Some Market Dojo for e-auctioning, some of the backend integrations for ERPs, etc. Craft and marketplace data, ditch carbon, scope 3. Obviously, Power BI. Power BI is an Azure native. It's an Azure cloud product anyway. And so we've done a lot of work to embed Power BI into the platform as an optional. And the AI, I'll get into that in a minute as well, with how we use AI and how the stuff we've got going on in AI coming up. Some of the market they've been saying about us, some customers. I'm going to share this deck, make it available as well, by the way. So this is out of date because Canada isn't showing, and it should be, but it's a growing footprint. A few things that we've been involved in. We've picked up by IDC, named IDC Innovator in the last year, which is pretty cool. So I just want to spend a couple of minutes on this interpreter, which is AI interpreter. We did some modeling, data modeling with some Novartis a little while back, and they said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could interpret all of this data that our partners are contributing onto the platform? They call their suppliers partners, which is obviously good news. But it would be good if we could interpret what they were saying in order to understand maybe the propensity to different types of risk or the nuance in a negotiation. So there's a lot we can do with that, as you'll see on the platform. We use sentiment analysis, excuse me, and psycholinguistic intel to analyze large groups of data. Similarly, auto risk is another AI project. These that I'm showing you now, by the way, are part of the roadmap for 2024. And they'll be running on to 2025, some new stuff coming out as well. But this is autonomous risk management. Give you a bit of flavor of that later as well. And this is heat map, which is reciprocal heat map surveys, which is actually really compelling because the outputs, when compared, show complete disparity across supplier and customer, and that in itself is a huge source of discussion and exploration for why one partner thinks one thing and the other thinks something completely different. There's a case study out there from BAE. This is just a testimonial. This is just a quote from the case study from their head of supplier operations. That's available online as well, that case study. There are a few out there. There's a 3-minute video in this deck and a social values slide. So this is ESG, social audit compliance. And that's that. So I'm just going to take a breath. David, do you want to come in quick?
No, I want to see stuff. I want to play with toys. That's what I'm here for. That's why I got the Twizzlers. Okay. I'm waiting for you. Come on.
Okay.
No,
Does that make sense so far? I can't
beautiful.
see anything in the chat or anything like that from where I'm sitting, so because I've got my screen up.
Anybody have any questions for Sheldon? Any thoughts? I'm very excited to see this in action. We've been talking about it for months and months and months. And even you going through your recent slides and some of the things that are coming up, I'm very excited about the AI interpreter. I know it's kind of brand new and in the planning stages, but
it is. That's our next session. Our next series, I think, isn't it?
Let's do it.
I'm planning that in the background. Yeah. So let me dive in. Okay, so you're currently looking at a production demo. So I'm just saying that it's pretty obvious, but anyway. So the data that you're looking at is illustrative, not real. Okay. So this is my login. Everybody's got their own login. And the first thing you can do, I'm going to get some of the really easy admin stuff out of the way and get into the chunkier stuff. So if you wanted to start, if you're a user and you wanted to start adding suppliers in, you can just do this manually, really, really easily. Okay, you can just start typing away manually, one person on the platform. Obviously, you can do this with CSVs and APIs and just you know, ingest tons of data into the platform, as does happen. But you can go easy, one finger typist like me, just plodding along, putting stuff in, getting the feel for the platform. You can start choosing from these kind of taxonomies or tower structures, as you can see here. You can add to these lists as well if you don't see the business areas that you like or that are relevant. You can use these free-form fields as well to build word clouds. All this is searchable, show you where in a minute. You can also add more fields for different zones or regions or countries, whatever. This is in the kind of base view. So you can, as I said, you can do this manually, or you can ingest this information in bulk. Same thing vis-a-vis users. Now, there are different types of users, and we don't limit on the number of users, by the way, because for us, it felt counterintuitive to limit on users when we're banging on about this being a truly collaborative platform. So with that, we do not limit on users, either limited licensed users or mapped stakeholders. So I'm just going to click into one of these very quickly to Daniel Smith. So it's, as I said, it's easy peasy, to be honest with you. You can set up Daniel, enter a name, the department, the type of user, and so none of these relationship owner roles are available to Daniel because they've already been taken by someone else. So clearly, if you wanted him to be relationship manager, you just go into that supplier, you remove the relationship owner, it will activate this box, and you can click him in. It's as simple as that. Or you can add him as a contributor to any of these suppliers. And clearly, there aren't many on here. This is a demo, so there aren't hundreds and hundreds of suppliers on it. There's like a dozen or so. But if there were hundreds, then it would be a filterable list. So you obviously don't get so much data forced down your throat. You can look at it in digestible amounts.
As a
Go on.
relationship owner, what do I see that's different from a contributor or a read access only person? What does it look like for a relationship owner?
Well, so a relationship owner has full, well, you won't see it here, but I'll show you as we go through the differences in views. You're absolutely right to pick that up. Different users have different views or different access to search. So a reader is clearly, you could bring somebody into with limited read access. There's different types of readers as well. You can actually become a reader here or a reader here. There's different types. A contributor reader. There's different limitations on the types of views. If you want to, so for example, if someone's going on holiday and you want somebody to come in and just stand in for you on something, you can bring them in as a contributor, and they'll take all the access that you've got whilst you're away, and then you can just untick them as soon as you're back, and you'll see what happens. Anybody that has a supplier against their name gets to see that in one of their logins. I'm going to come out of this. Suffice to say that this is the manual version again, but you can ingest an entire AD into the platform very, very easily. So from here, I wanted to get that particular
AD
bit out
meaning Active Directory,
Active
Microsoft.
Directory.
Okay.
Sorry, yes, Active Directory. So a library of users. And look, if a company doesn't use AD, it doesn't matter. You know, I tend to talk in Microsoft terms. Bad habit.
Terrible habit.
Terrible habit, I know. So look, here we are. So I'm going to select a supplier. These are the suppliers on the platform. So you can click through. If you see a badge here, you can click on someone's name and you can just speak to them here if you wanted to. These are the towers that we, those fields we were just looking at. You can search from these fields. You can search here. If you add another field, country, region, etc., it will appear here, and these will just shift over. So very, very easy. So let's just select one of these suppliers. I'm going to go into Acme. So straight away, you can see data, live data, because this is scoring everything that's going on in these modules. You've got spend data, stakeholder mapping, reciprocal assessment data. I'm going to show you those in a minute. These scores are showing you the live status, kind of activity, engagement, cadence of everything going on within each one of those modules. And this is an aggregation of everything above. Now, I'll show you more about that as we get into it. Before I go into that, I want to show you something else. We spoke about 4 pillars in the other deck, okay? Which, by the way, looks like this out of the box. So I'm just going to click into that one. It looks like that out of the box. You've got 4 pillars: relationship, commercial, projects, and service. It's highly bespokeable. You can turn that on its head, deactivate them, create a whole bunch of new headings. These are all headings. Each one of these represents a frictionless workspace for an entire cohort or community to come together to work, as I'll show you in a minute. So that's what it looks like, nice and tidy out of the box. I'm going to click back into the other one where it was really messy. It looks like that. You can jump around the platform very, very quickly. It's very intuitive and easy to use. That's one of the things that that BAE said, actually, that it's not like using SAP. It's very quick, easy, intuitive. You can jump around all over the place. So I'm going to give you, in under 30 seconds, the kind of premise, if you like, the principle behind 4 pillars. We think that every relationship that you can think of, it doesn't matter what you're buying, selling, how much of it, who to, who from, etc., can be split into 4 main pillars. You'll always have a relationship pillar where your softer type activity goes. A commercial pillar, maybe your financials, your commercials, procurement activity. Maybe you're running projects over here. Maybe you're running a BAU service over here. And that kind of helps to kind of differentiate the type of activities that you see in each one. We have different suppliers, different customers and suppliers adding different subcategories. We call them subcategories, but the workspaces, product lines, service lines, whatever you want to call them. A whole different nature of different things depending on what the service is being provided. So we're talking from recruitment to kind of manufacturing, electronics, MRO use cases, etc., etc. Merchandise supply chain, even with the names of produce being produced here, food produce as well. There's a whole range of different things and different use cases that can be created. And when you want to create new subcategories, you just go to here, you select where you want it to go, you give it a name, and then you can kind of activate it or not, as the case may be. They can be activated seasonally or monthly or in line with a specific service improvement project. Anyway, moving on. So here are those. I'm going to click in a relation into one of those 4. I'll go to it from here, actually. You can see. I'm going to click into this one here. Takes you to here. So you can jump around all over the place to get to the same place. Here are those 4 pillars: relationship, commercial, projects, and service. So if I click through them very quickly, you can see straight away, go back to the top. Here are the live subcategories. A snippet of information, the last approach score. This is system generated. This shows you the last time this was updated by a customer. This actually shows you over here the last time somebody else updated it. And you can actually see who did what anywhere in the platform. And I'll show you that in a minute. This shows you the number of KPIs that are running in this particular, in any one of these these projects. There's 4 KPIs here. That doesn't mean they're scoring green. That means they are not. That means they're scoring amber for all of them together, which means they are not all up to date. Maybe there's one lapsed. Maybe it's been deployed, but it's not been scored. There's an action against it. And that feeds into a lot of the workflow automations that I'll come into. Here you can see there's also a live chat going right now in this particular project. I'm going to click into it over here. So where are we? Okay, so we're into this project. So you can see that these guys are they're collaborating at the moment on something. You can see by their badges, this is a global admin from the customer. This is a relationship owner from the customer. This is a supplier. And these guys are talking over here. They could be discussing in this open forum working conditions in a factory, for example, over here. A very messy looking factory. Let's go back to here. Oh, they could be discussing KPIs that are running over here. Now that was amber, wasn't it, on the previous screen? It's amber because this KPI has not been scored. It's been scored before. It was last updated November, but it's not been scored now, and so that's prompting a call to action, which the system takes over and manages for you. So these guys they could be scoring a KPI. Maybe they want to create a new KPI. So I'm just going to run through this very, very quickly. So the system is pulling in all of the project-based KPIs. There are only 47 in this particular demo version, but there are a lot more than that normally. Let me just click on one of them here, top one. So straight away, it's sucking in the data from the database for this KPI. So you can't edit these bits at the top because they're from the database. You can edit the description. You can obviously edit the frequency. You can't edit the type because, as I said, it's from the database, but you can obviously edit the metrics. So I'm going to click on that. I'm not going to start editing stuff now. And it's dropped it in. So it's never been scored before. I've just created it. So I can either score it now, or I can delete it. Sorry, get rid of that. I can edit it, or I can delete it. I'm going to delete it. I'll show you why I'm going to delete it. Because I want to create another one. I'm going to create a custom KPI. So now I can create a custom KPI. It's giving it a custom pro reference, any name, any subgroup, any description, any type that I want. So these KPIs, by the way, when you create custom KPIs, you can deploy them across any other suppliers that you want across your entire ecosystem. And then you can compare them across an entire tower, category, et cetera, et cetera. So these are all KPIs that we are creating on the platform, but we can also curate them into the platform from other systems. And what this system will do, if you do that, for example, if you were plugging in a data set from Salesforce, you mentioned them earlier, you can do that. And we are working with other organizations to do just that as in order to provide a working parallel. So the company in question is using Salesforce as its playbook, do this, 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 and this, and you're going to get here. And they are interested in using Suppeco. What they are using is using Suppeco to create these KPIs, but in a live setting to actually use as a barometer again, not a barometer, but a kind of a compass against their predefined Salesforce playbook, so that they understand when Salesforce says you're going to get here, 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 you're going to do these things, you're going to get over here, but then you end up over there. The live nature of what we're doing on the platform says, okay, well, you were supposed to end up over there, but you've ended up over here. This is why you've ended up over here, because we are creating a narrative on a live basis within Suppeco. Anyway, quick diversion there. So these guys could be discussing these KPIs that have been created. They could have ingested them into the platform. If you ingest data into the platform, the system will take over the automation or the tracking and management of those KPIs. I'm going to give you a little bit more on that in a minute. I'm just conscious of time. You can also look back through the history of any of these projects that are taking place. This is all unstructured data, by the way. Let me start giving you a little bit more explanation on the unstructured data. So it's really important. So this is just going to track data all the way back through the lifespan of this service project, whatever it happens to be. It's going on and on and on and on. Look, this is all unstructured data, and you can see who's created. You can jump around through the different pillars as well. I'm just going to come out of that then.
In this example, where does this data come from?
This data has all been created by the community that have been plugged into this project over the last for however many months it's been running for, and that's not just commentary. That could be that's commentary up here. That's chat. That's documentation. You can see who's been that's approach scores as well. So for example, you can see Jim Johnson last scored the approach, but Sally Prodson last gave an update. And you can track who made all of those updates. There's a reason for that. It's very, very important, because when you are using Interpreter, if you plug Interpreter into this and you want it to say, hey, I want you to look across this visibility region 3 project, which is clearly about operating standards at this particular region. Could be because maybe they closed region 2 and pushed all product or production into region 3, which had a throttling effect on their ability to deliver output, and also had an impact on the standards that they were able to operate to. So there's a number of different things that play there. But anyway, going off on a tangent on that. So the amount of unstructured data that's been offered up into this project, if you shine the interpreter lens across that data, it will look, you can ask it to look for certain nuances in certain themes and patterns within the data. It can look for frustration in commentary. If it's a negotiation, it can look for certain types of language used in a negotiation, maybe frustration at the length of time something is taken to deliver, etc. You can also use the narrative in stakeholder mapping as the context when analyzing contributors' data. So if you want the system to analyze everything Sally said in a project going back 6 months, it will do that. If you want to zoom out and ask Interpreter to check everything that's happened across every single one of the project subcategories rather than the one that we're looking at for the last 6 months, it will do that, and it will pull back the data. It will pull back what you ask it to do. You can also use it, something else, we've been speaking with Infotech about this, and they said, can we use it to help us analyze the data incumbent to a relationship when we want to start producing RFPs? because it's going to have the nuance and the feel of services that are already being created, so it can drop that in to any RFP documentation, or let's just say RFX documentation. So
Okay.
there's a lot of different stuff happening, and the amount of use cases that are coming out of AI, it's incredible. Bear in mind that AI, the natural playground for AI for generative AI is unstructured data, which is our playground. Everything we do is unstructured data. That's not just the commentary. That's all of this stuff here as well. Everything we keep,
Okay.
it's all tracked within the platform. Also, obviously, locking the data for the previous months, it's locked out. Footnotes are open. You can't change history, right? But you can add footnotes if you want to take issue with commentary, etc., etc. I'm just going to jump through. As again, conscious of time, we've got about 21 minutes to go. Shared documentation. This isn't like any old shared documentation. First of all, customers and supplier can both upload into here. You can also put data attributes behind these uploads in order to generate calls to action and notifications as well. So it's rather than becoming a some kind of dusty shelf, a shelfware. This is keeping the plate spinning in terms of documentation that's uploaded. It's giving ownership to suppliers as well. It's a way of not having to do everything yourself, but have the system police it for you. Events management as well, used for SOC audits, ISO audits, contract audits, etc., etc. So again, creating events, giving it an event name, giving it a date, description, selecting who you want to be involved, not just from the customer, but from the supplier as well, and then dropping it in, and you can select the dates. These are all clonable as well, because these events are often repetitive, right? There's something else I wanted to show you in here as well, which is very important before I move on. So every single project, every single service line on the platform is analyzed by the data, by a set of algorithms looking for the quality and the age of every single bit of data. Okay, so if you're marked down on the quality of data, I say you're marked down, but the system looks at the quality of the data, especially the length of the data that's been added. Because if it's no good as a narrative, providing narrative to other users, then it's not as valuable, right? So the system looks at every single project, every single service line that exists across every single supplier relationship on the platform. As you're looking at a few here, it looks for anything that's about to go from amber to red in 10 days time, and it pushes a mini report with all the salient data and a call to action out to the customer and to the supplier stakeholders to say, hey, you've got a project on innovation, or you've got a project on flexibility that's gone red. It will send the salient data, age status, or an overage status, and a call to action button, say, hey, you've got to act here. It's a way of keeping the plate spinning. As I said, I sat on that call with BP, and it's exactly what they said. We got too much data. We just want to know what's keeping us up at night now. That's what's going to keep everything moving, rather than cramming it all down our throats. So that's why we do. That's why we do what we do with the data. Same thing vis-a-vis KPIs. So we were looking in here earlier on. We saw one of the KPIs had lapsed. So whereas every single Monday morning the system does its trawl and it sends out that data in a kind of slick table. We're not what's the word I'm looking for? Spamming with email all the time. It goes out in one slick email table with all the different projects running in it with the salient data and a call to action button and the age status. Same thing vis-a-vis KPIs. Really important that KPIs are kept up to date. And this is the other thing. If you are bringing those KPIs in from another system, this system will take over the automation of those KPIs. So, for example, if these 4 KPIs had come in from another system and one of them was missing its score, then even though they hadn't been managed within this platform, they'd come in from elsewhere. This system will take over the call to action of that KPI. It'll push it out to its owner. As long as you've got those systems connected, for APIs, and it knows where that data is coming from and where it's got to go. It will push that out to make sure that that data is completed. Excuse me. I want to show you some different ways of looking at the data. Again, this is quite a popular go-to actually, because it does away with having to create a lot of the kind of PowerPoint type action activity. It's just all there. So this is it's very good for remote devices as well, because it's big block data. So here you can see the different pillars. Down here you can see visibility region 3, which is the one we were looking at. I can click into it as well. Click into the data. In fact, let me just do something else whilst I'm in here. I don't know how I'm going to try this. I don't know how well this will work on a mobile device, but I'm going to try it on a desktop device. So we're now looking at an iPhone 12 Pro, as you can see here on the left. Improvised because it's a Zoom screen share. But here's our visibility region 3. So clicking into it, it's showing you all of the different data, all of the different documentation that's been uploaded, the different chat that's taking place as well, etc. So there's no degradation of data across devices as well, because the last thing you want is just not to be able to find what you want whilst you're on the move. So I'm going to come out of that because I don't know how good that is to look at on an improvised device. So come out of that. So we're back in here. There's also a bunch of different warning triangles that come up to tell you. So for example, this is showing green and there's some nice stuff said, but it's 877 days old. So there's a triangle that comes up to say, hey, this data is old. You need to do something about it. Again, over here, and everything on here is interactive, to be honest with you. 2 minutes, 2-second dash, but you can dive into the detail. It's great on a mobile phone because it's very big and blocky data. It's all live data as well. So if you're looking at stuff and someone's in and they're updating stuff, it will change in front of your eyes. It will show you that things are happening. But if you are looking at your team's work and you want to see where they're going, it's a heat map performance by color. You can just jump around and you can dive in. It's fully interactive as well. If you see something you don't like, you can just jump into a conversation with them. KPI trending as well. So these are the different pillars. It's fully interactive as well, just by jumping around all of these different areas. There's also cross-party, cross-supplier, KPI trending analysis as well. You can get an overview of who's doing what in your team. These are the different suppliers by module. So I want to go into something else very quickly. This is important. So in fact, there's something I didn't show you. God, I've been doing this a long time and I dropped the ball. So let me just show you. So all this talk about it being collaborative, right? And I haven't shown you any collaboration. So look, these guys down here, they're having a conversation. You've got supplier here, you've got customers here. But let's say they want to bring somebody else in to talk about a collaboration, talk about these working conditions, et cetera, et cetera. It was actually one of our customers that said, look, we want to be able to bring people in. This is CSR in action. We don't want to wait 3 months to ensure that our suppliers are doing the right thing, because we're going through, vetting and getting hardware, software approval and passes and God knows what else, because 3 months has gone by. We need it now. So how do we do that? So I'll show you more on stakeholder mapping in a minute, but suffice to say that these are people that have already been mapped, and these different badges, service, relationship, commercial, show that these guys have got access to data that flows through these different pillars. But what I want to do is and these guys work for different suppliers, as you can see from this list here. But what I want to do is bring somebody new in. So I just click on add stakeholder. They either work for a customer, supplier, or another supplier. So let's say they work for, this is a catch-all email address that we use. So you never know who you're emailing, do you really? So I'm just going to make that up. The system is going to look for Jane. It won't find Jane because I've literally just made her up. And Jane is an auditor, and she has that surname too, funnily enough. Audit PLC. I'm going to add Jane. So it did it. So if it found Jane, it would have told me that Jane works for such and such. Are you sure you want to do this, etc., etc. So there's a lot of there's a lot of ethical practice built into the running of the platform, because you don't want, if you're in supplier A, for example, you don't want to be able to bring someone in from supplier A if they happen to work for supplier B. So the system's going to say, hey, this person works for supplier B, so go into supplier B and bring them in through there. So there's a lot of ethical good practice in there. And that's kind of unavoidable, because you need to ensure that you're absolutely nailing how this data is flowing, rather than just making it easy because it's cool to do so. You've got to be on the right side of ethical trading. So here's Jane, by the way, down here. Just untick that. So Jane, we want to bring in as a guest. So Jane is going to get an email to say, hey, Jane, you've been invited into such and such to discuss working conditions, or in this case, visibility region 3. Click here to create a password. Now, we work with single sign-on, but not for guests that we would bring in just for this particular purpose. So Jane will get her email. She'll get an email to say log it to say pick a password, and she'll appear here, and she can join the chat. She can talk to these guys in the open forum, or she can DM them. If you DM anybody, you'll get notifications up here, but you'll also get emails to say, hey, you've received a message from such and such. So it's all kind of like WhatsApp in a way, but a lot more secure, I should say. Um, so um, so that's bringing people in very, very quickly. Let me show you something else on stakeholder mapping. So the score on stakeholder mapping, which was here, by the way, 80%. You can see how this is likely to go up and down all the time, because KPIs are, data is aging, things are going red, things are going green, KPIs are being created, not scored. You name it. There's any nature of different things that are happening. So this score is quite active. This one is more static, because just by virtue of what it does, there's going to be less movement over here. But if I click into stakeholder mapping and I just do a select all data dump, I want to show you something. So you're going to get an idea of the amount of people that can be logged in or linked into an operation. So it's a long list, and as you go down, you can see these guys, how they are, how they get access to different pillars of information. And you can do that. You can actually bring somebody in as a guest and give them access to one subcategory rather than a whole pillar, just as we did with Jane. Here's Jane. She's got no access to anything. If we want Jane to be involved further on, we just click on enter mapping, select where we want Jane to be involved in projects, which is where we were. Maybe she's a PM, and she works in audits, as we know. And we can put in some narrative as well, which is always good, not just to help other users, but as I said, interpreter can use the narrative that we provide as context when looking. So if you want to understand what somebody's drivers are, if the system knows what somebody's drivers are, and then it looks for the language used in the delivery of a project, whatever that happens to be, or service, it can obviously make an association between those motives, those drivers, and the resulting, text copy that it's reading, the language and narrative that it's reading in a project delivery.
So with what you're saying here, with what you're showing us now, right? You've
Yes,
got this stakeholder map. Does this would it give me like a rating of their influence? Like, I've got all this information for the relationship owner, Jim Johnson. Jim is working on a project with Shelly and a couple of other people, and it's
yeah,
got multiple vendors. But I know that everybody listens to Jim, so he's got a lot of influence. Is
yeah,
that something that we can show here as part of the relationship?
yes, yes. Now we've got to be careful what we say, because this is why, by the way, you can see where it says HR rep. This is to ensure that for any of the stuff that's happening within interpreter, where necessary, we make sure that it's very ethically used. Okay, because What you don't want to be
Okay.
doing is getting yourself in the middle of an HR. Do you know what I'm saying?
I
Um,
do. I do. I don't want to go to HR.
exactly. So you got to be careful to make sure you're ethical in the way that you trade and the way that you treat your workforce as well. Which is why for certain things, so for example, it says no here where it says HR rep, which would actually deactivate some of the functionality within interpreter if you want it to. It's
Okay.
set. It defaults to do that. There are different settings in the platform that you can. So this is intended that suppliers can log in and score KPIs. For example, they can log in and score KPIs. They get weekly updates themselves. They get all of the login. They get to do everything that you everything we've been looking at. The suppliers can do a lot of that as well. Funnily enough, they can't access stakeholder mapping, but in terms of the reciprocal assessments, et cetera, they can access those things. You can give them control. You can allow them to upload, to receive weekly reports, calls to action.
Is there a
Uh,
way to do like a reverse CSAT? What are we like as a customer to the vendors?
yeah, well, that's the heat map. That's heat map surveys that's coming out, which is a very
Oh,
fresh take on surveys, to be honest with you. So we the way we're going to do it is to we've got we used to do these on a bespoke basis, actually, kind of almost a PowerPoint type thing. 20 words pop up on the screen one at a time, and as the word pops up on the screen, let's say flexibility. The word flexibility comes up on the screen, and then a question will come up associated with the word flexibility, and that might be: does the supplier demonstrate flexibility beyond contract? And then it will ask you to litmus grade it. You know, green at the top, fading to red at the bottom, and you can litmus grade it. You just decide, and then it will give you another question, and it will take you through 20 questions. You don't have to do 20, and you can change the questions and completely turn it on its head, of course. But then what you then do is once you've submitted, it then locks that out. It also asks the other side the same questions about you. And what's really interesting about that, number one, is that if you think your supplier is green on the flexibility, but they think you are red on the flexibility, that in itself is a really interesting discussion.
it's very telling.
Why
It's
do
very
why do
telling.
wait? It's true, isn't it? Why
Yeah.
do they think that about us when we've said that about them? What are
I
we
think
missing
I think
here?
Sheldon, we are very close to time. And as people who work in procurement and SRM, it's always important for us to understand how we're viewed by our supplier base. And we've
Yep.
got you've given us a lot to look at with this demo. By the way, if any of you want to see any more of this of the Suppeco platform, please reach out to Sheldon, reach out to myself. I can hook you up with Sheldon. We're going to send out the slides. His contact information, his LinkedIn are all in is all in there.
Yep.
Um, but I think one of the key things that we need to talk about as we move forward, um, maybe the next part of our discussion is understanding how to derive those opinions from relationships. Maybe when your heat map product is ready, we can do something like that.
I think we should do a session on interpreter and heat map,
I
which
I
is
am inclined to agree with you. You know, I like
so
playing with
we
toys.
and we're obviously look, we're transactable on Azure Marketplace as well. And we've been doing some stuff with Microsoft. They actually came to us and said, "Hey, we want to help you with your AI interpreter program um, using Azure AI." So that's pretty exciting for us. So we're part of a private cohort with them, ISV cohort with Microsoft to actually drive that out. That's happening at the moment as we speak. So
That's
very, very
pretty cool.
exciting. And with what we've created, we've 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 set the foundation. Everything we've been looking at is part of this digital relationship layer for different people to come together and drive value from the relationship space. So yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff going on in that area.
Very cool. Sheldon, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for showing me your wonderful platform. We will definitely talk again. Everybody, thank you so much for being here. We are at time. I appreciate you so much for joining. I hope you got some valuable insights.
We didn't even
Um,
get to the spend management. I was talking too
and
much.
we didn't get to the spend management. Thank you so much, everyone.
Pleasure.
Have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you in a month.
Cheers, guys.